Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. The NHL has just started getting underway with the prospects camp games, and it's been a fun one for sure. The Blackhawks went, I believe, 1-1 in their prospect games over this past weekend. We got a comeback overtime win over the St. Louis Blues in the first game on Saturday. Oliver Moore with the game-winning goal, and according to Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, that was set up by Sam Menzel for the game winner. So the two Golden Gophers working together to score that game-winning goal. And then I think on Sunday, the Blackhawks lost their other prospect game to the Minnesota Wild. But it was just good seeing all the prospects in action, no matter what or who your favorite team is. It's always great seeing the young players in action, and I'm really excited as a Blackhawks fan to see our prospects in action because we are in a rebuild, and we already have a lot of young talent. And in fact, NHL Network had us as the number one prospect pool, of course number two being the San Jose Sharks, but my Chicago Blackhawks had the number one best prospects pool on NHL Network. So that was actually kind of great to hear as a Blackhawks fan. But enough talking about my Chicago Blackhawks. Enough talking about the prospect games. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Enjoyed the prospects games of your favorite team. But enough talking about that. Let's get into the announcements for today. So, of course, Monday, everything's changed. These are going to be subject to change, by the way. We're going to get an episode out, which is this one. We'll talk about Marc-André Fleury returning to the Steel City. And, of course, address some of the Sidney Crosby trade rumors that have been going around. Wednesday, September 17th, there will still be an episode out. We'll talk about the possible Hughes reunion in that episode. That was supposed to be for this episode, but I pushed it to Wednesday's episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast to talk about that. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday's episode along with NHL season predictions and awards. Friday, September 19th, we'll do an NHL preseason preview, prospects, rookies to watch. Again, the NHL had their prospects weekend, so we'll talk about some of the prospects to watch, at least top prospects to watch. We'll even do a ranking video on the TG Hockey channel to see, because the NHL did release their top 25 prospects. Now it's going to do a ranking video on who is, number one, elite, and then who is needs some work and stuff like that. So we'll do that on the TG Hockey channel. And speaking of ranking videos, there is supposed to be an NHL ranking video coming out on the TG Hockey channel Tuesday that will talk about my rankings for teams that are cup contenders to teams that are just flat out awful. So make sure to turn on your notifications for that. And as always, if you are listening or watching the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, make sure to give me a follow on there. We are with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to give this podcast a follow wherever you're watching. Whatever platform you're listening on or watching, if it's YouTube, obviously, whatever platform you're listening on, make sure to give me a follow right there so you don't miss all the latest NHL news and an in-depth analysis from yours truly about the greatest sport in the world, which is hockey. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the NHL news for today. So as I just said a couple maybe 1-2 minutes ago, Marc-André Fleury is coming back to the Steel City. He signed a professional tryout contract, otherwise known as a PTO, with the Pittsburgh Penguins last Friday. He will. Now, let's get one thing straight here. He's not officially returning to the NHL. He's not going to pull off a Mario Lemieux where he comes out of retirement and turns to the NHL. He's still retired. He retired after the 2024-25 season. So he's still retired, but he's just going to come play this one only preseason game with the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Columbus Blue Jackets on September 27 at PPG Paints Arena. After that, unfortunately, we will be seeing no more of Marc-André Fleury in the NHL. No doubt he is a Hockey Hall of Famer for sure. So he will practice with the Penguins on September 26, 2025. And then he will play parts of their preseason exhibition game against the Columbus Blue Jackets on September 27th at PPG Paints Arena. And like I mentioned already, Marc-André Fleury retired after the 2024-25 season following a 21-year NHL career. He's still going to retire as the Minnesota Wild because I think he said in some article I read that or maybe it was some video that he didn't want to disrespect the Minnesota Wild because that was his last NHL team he played for. So he still wants to retire with the Minnesota Wild, but he's going to try and close things out for good in Pittsburgh, where he played his first 13 seasons in the NHL. He was drafted by the Penguins in 2003. And he's going to come back there to where it all started to play this preseason game and to officially close things out. And Marc-André Fleury, he's meant a lot to the Penguins, meant a lot to the fans. Every NHL fan, no matter what team you like, you got to be a fan of Marc-André Fleury. A fun guy to be around. And as a Blackhawks fan, I'm very happy that he's going to be closing things out in Pittsburgh. He's going to be playing this exhibition game in front of the Penguins fans. It's going to be a great, despite this being a preseason game, it's going to be a great game. Marc-André Fleury did play for the Blackhawks, by the way, to those who did not know. That's why I said as a Blackhawks fan, because Marc-André Fleury did play for the Chicago Blackhawks after playing for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm going to miss Marc-André Fleury being in the NHL. Maybe he ends up what Pat Maroon is doing. I think Pat Maroon is coaching his son's hockey team. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's coaching his son's hockey team. Maybe Marc-André Fleury can do that. Maybe be a goaltending coach. Or he could do some broadcasting. I mean, I have seen Pat Maroon on NHL TNT, NHL Network. Maybe that's in the cards for Flower to still get involved with the game of hockey and not actually going away from it. But yeah, we're all going to miss Marc-André Fleury in the NHL. A humble guy, great guy to be around. He's fun to watch. And yeah, one of the top 5 goalies. I think he's second or third on the NHL's all-time wins list. I think right behind Martin Brodeur. I might be getting this wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's second or third on the NHL's all-time goalie wins list behind Martin Brodeur. I think the number 1 is Patrick Raw. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the 3 Quebec goalies right there in the top 3. But it's been an illustrious career for Marc-André Fleury. 3-time Stanley Cup champion, winning all his Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2009, 2016, and 2017. And like I said, I think he's second in NHL all-time wins behind Martin Brodeur. 575 wins, and he's played 1,051 games, and he started 1,017 of them. Of course, he played with the Golden Knights. He played with the Penguins, then the Golden Knights, and then the Blackhawks, and then the Wild. And again, just to specify this, a PTO does not mean a full comeback. Unfortunately, we're not going to see Marc-André Fleury in the NHL for another season. After 21 seasons in the NHL, the flower is hanging up the skates, but he's just going to play in this one and only preseason exhibition game or play parts of the game with the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think another thing, too, this will bring back nostalgia because of all the things Marc-André Fleury did during his first 13 seasons in the NHL with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think it would be a full circle moment for him, the fans, his family. And it's going to be an emotional game for sure. Despite this being a preseason game, I could see this being an emotional game for Penguins fans to watch the Flower wearing a black and gold Pittsburgh Penguins jersey. But still staying on the Pittsburgh Penguins topic, it's time to address some of the Sidney Crosby trade rumors. And Sidney Crosby has even mentioned himself that he and the Penguins are aware of these trade rumors. And to be honest, I don't want to upset a few Penguins fans or any Penguins fans that might be watching or listening to this podcast, but I can see this being or possibly being Sidney Crosby's last season as a Pittsburgh Penguin. And the only reason why, there's a couple reasons why I said this, was because, for one thing, the Penguins have an aging core. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, Rush, etc. So this Penguins team not doing any good. Aging core. In fact, I made another bold prediction saying that I have the Penguins finishing as one of the bottom 5 teams by the end of the season. And this is coming from a guy who has a couple of buddies and acquaintances of mine that are Pittsburgh Penguins fans, and even they told me that the Penguins suck. So, yeah, I'm just going based off of that and also based off of my knowledge or so for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I honestly don't see the Pittsburgh Penguins doing that well and making another playoff spot with the trio of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. I honestly don't. And they could be in the talks of getting Gavin McKenna, which hopefully they don't win the draft lottery in 2026. Hopefully it's the Blackhawks, so they can draft Gavin McKenna and he can play with his cousin Connor Bedard. But I can see the Penguins going into a full-on rebuild, no question about it. I can see this being a rebuild for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sidney Crosby I think his contract is set to expire after the 2026-27 season. In 2027 season, he will be a UFA. He's only 37 years old, but he'll be, like, at the time when he's a UFA, he'll be, 39 years old. So, yeah, he'll be 39 years old once he's a UFA, and then maybe he might hang up the skates after that. We'll just have to see. But, again, like I said, this could be his last season with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I know if you're a Penguins fan, you don't want to hear that. And I honestly don't blame you, but I don't see Sidney Crosby sticking around for the Penguins for this year. I think if he does get traded at the deadline, I could see him playing for either the Canadiens, Avalanche, maybe to go play with his buddy Nathan McKinnon. They played with each other on Team Canada before. They'll play with each other on the Colorado Avalanche. And, yeah, that's basically it. Canadiens and Avalanche. Those are the only two teams that I can see him playing for. But if Sidney Crosby still continues to produce, if he continues to have a solid season, maybe he can still stay on the team. But if not, if the Penguins overall aren't doing well, if Sid's not the Sid that we watched growing up, if he's not in his prime, then I can see the Penguins trading him or this being his last season. And again, I don't want to upset Penguins fans. I hate to say that this will be his last season because of what Crosby has meant to Pittsburgh. I don't want to say that, but in my head, I can see this being his last season. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know you guys' thoughts on it. You don't have to. I know Penguins fans aren't going to agree with that statement. I know I'm going to get chirped in the comments. And I honestly don't blame you guys for that. But I just don't see Sidney Crosby playing another season with Pittsburgh with the way Pittsburgh has been playing so terribly. Yeah. But again, you guys might have different opinions. And I would love to hear those opinions down in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with the statements I just said. But now we're going to be moving on from the Steel City to the Sunshine State. Corey Perry, he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks for the LA Kings after a knee surgery. So he had an injury in practice with the LA Kings at training camp. And then after that, he underwent knee surgery. And then we would get the word that he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. So he'll miss the rest of the training camp, and he could also be out for the first month of the regular season. So we're most likely to see him back in November. Back in November is when we're most likely to see Corey Perry in action again. But as you take a look at his stats from last season with the Edmonton Oilers, he had 30 points in 81 games played, 19 goals, 11 assists for 30 points in 81 games played, 14 points in 22 playoff games with the Oilers, and he's been to the Stanley Cup Final 5 of the 6 past seasons after his 2007 Cup win with Anaheim. He's been to the 2020 Stanley Cup Final with the Dallas Stars. He's lost. He's been to the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals with Montreal, and he lost. 2022 Stanley Cup Final with Tampa, he lost. 2023 Stanley Cup Final, was that? What was he on? I don't think he's been. Was he in the 2023 Stanley Cup Final? I'm not sure. That was Vegas and Florida, and I definitely didn't see Corey Perry play for those teams. And then 2024, 2025, both being with Edmonton, and he lost. So, yeah. So maybe the LA Kings, could they be the team that goes to the Stanley Cup Final and win the Stanley Cup? I sure as heck don't see that happening. Because the one thing, the Corey Perry curse, because of, again, been to the 5 or 6 past Stanley Cup Finals and lost with each team that he's played for. And another thing, the LA Kings, they can't seem to get out of the first round. Of course, being eliminated by the Edmonton Oilers 4 years in a row. So they have their first round issues. At least not the Toronto Maple Leafs, though. So, yeah, but they have their first round issues. I don't see them. I sure as heck don't see them going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, yeah, they need to resolve their first round issues and stuff like that. And again, the Corey Perry curse. Another reason, but we'll just have to see how the LA Kings do without Corey Perry for this first month in October of the NHL regular season. I think Corey Perry was brought in to be a bottom 6 player for the LA Kings, but I know they're going to have to shake up their lineup since he's going to be out. He can also help out on the special teams. I think that's another plus, adding Corey Perry. I think he's really good on the special teams and he can help out with that, but again, him being out, going to have to make some changes for that. So we'll just have to see what the LA Kings do. And best of luck to Corey Perry. Wish him a speedy recovery. And hope to see him back in action soon. So he should be back in November. And we'll see what happens there. I want to watch that. I want to watch the game where the Kings take on the Ducks at the Honda Center. And we'll see if Corey Perry gets booed or not. I don't know. I said this on the podcast before. I don't know if we're going to hear the boos from the Ducks fans, Corey Perry, when the Kings take on the Ducks at the Honda Center, because the Kings, Ducks, Sharks all have a California rivalry. They're all California teams. LA Kings, San Jose Sharks, Anaheim Ducks, California rivalries right there. So we'll just have to see. But moving on from that, Spencer Knight. He signs a 3-year, $17.5 million contract deal with the Chicago Blackhawks this past Saturday with an AAV of $83 million. The extension will kick off in the 2026-27 NHL season and will run through the end of the 2029-2030 season. Spencer Knight is entering the final year of his contract deal he signed with the Florida Panthers in 2022. And without this extension, without him being signed, he would have been a RFA, restricted free agent, after the 2025-26 season. He was acquired by the Blackhawks on March 1st of 2025 from the Florida Panthers, along with a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft in exchange for defenseman Seth Jones and the 2026 fourth-round pick, which, as a Blackhawks fan, I'm so glad that we made that trade. Not because I hated Seth Jones, but because he wasn't doing that good in Chicago. Like every defense play he would try and make has stunk. It was just horrible. So it's not that I didn't like Seth Jones. I think he's an excellent defenseman, especially in his prime. But in his Chicago days, he was not good. He was awful. So I don't hate Seth Jones. Again, I think he's a great defenseman. But I just didn't want him on the Blackhawks because of the plays that he was making. And we're trying to bring in young talent. And there was nowhere on the team for him to fit in. So he needed to go. But anyway, taking a look at Spencer Knight's stats from last season. He had a 17-6-3 record with a 2.72 goals against average and a .902 save percentage and 2 shutouts in 38 games with the Chicago Blackhawks and Florida Panthers. I should have said it the other way around because he played for the Florida Panthers first and then was traded to the Chicago Blackhawks. But specifically with the Chicago Blackhawks, he had a 5-8-2 record with a 3.18 goals against average and a .8 some save percentage. I'm forgetting that, but yeah, his stats with the Blackhawks from last season were not good, as we pretty much all expected, because the Blackhawks overall as a team were not good. But this is a whole new season for Spencer Knight. He's going to be playing his first full season with the Chicago Blackhawks, and maybe he'll have some better stats with the Blackhawks than he did for half of the games that he played with the Blackhawks for last season. We'll see some better stats from Spencer Knight. And as a Blackhawks fan, I can see Spencer Knight as the number one goalie because having Peter Mrazek on the team just wasn't it. It was not it. He's now in the Anaheim Ducks. He's going to be playing under former Chicago Blackhawks head coach Joe Quenneville. But we just, like for the Seth Jones situation, I didn't see where Peter Mrazek was going to fit on his team, so he needed to go as well. So, yeah. But I can't wait for this season because I believe the Blackhawks will do, at least I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they'll do slightly better than they will last season. We got a number one goalie in Spencer Knight. I believe this rebuild will work out just as planned. I believe it's going to work out well at the end. And Kyle Davidson has just been on a rampage with these contracts lately. I think he signed Alex Blasser to a long-term contract deal. He signed Frank Nazar to a 7-year contract deal. He signed Spencer Knight to a 3-year contract deal. So he's just been on fire with these contracts, and we're still waiting for the Connor Bedard extension because after this season, Connor Bedard will be an RFA after the 2025-26 season, and so we're still awaiting. We're patiently waiting for Connor Bedard to sign the contract deal, but no rush in the contract. As Blackhawks fans, just going to be patient and can't wait to see the new contract deal for Connor Bedard. Because, of course, he is the franchise player for the Chicago Blackhawks. And I'm hoping him and Frank Nazar will be the next Patrick Kane and Jonathan Tage. But moving on from one goaltender to another. The Philadelphia Flyers, they trade goaltender Ivan Fedotov to the Columbus Blue Jackets for a 6th-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft. He's in the final season of his 2 years, $6.5 million contract deal that he signed in April 2024. And he'll be a unrestricted free agent, UFA, after the season. And taking a look at his stats from Philadelphia Flyers, he had a 6-13-4 record with a 3.15 goals against average and a .880 save percentage. And I think this is a good trade for both of these teams because the Blue Jackets get a towering presence in Ivan Fedotov, 6'7", 214 pounds. Maybe could put up better stats with the Columbus Blue Jackets because the Blue Jackets were after what was the emotional, sad, tough season last year. I believe that there's a chance that the Blue Jackets could creep in or get into a wild card spot this season. So, and I think Ivan Fedotov will do just that. He might be in the AHL. Not gonna lie, that will depend on how Elvis Merzlikins and Jeff Grease will play because it seemed like during the second half of last year's season they've been doing solid with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So if they continue to keep that up, I can see Fedotov being in the AHL. But if not, maybe he can be the backup goalie to Elvis Merzlikins and they can assign Jeff Grease to the AHL. It just has to depend on what they do afterwards. But I thought Merzlikins and Grease have played solid. I wouldn't say well, but it was solid. It was all right during the second half of last season. So if they continue to do that and produce, I could see them being the number one, still the number one, number two, and with Fedotov being in the AHL. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that statement. Do you agree with the statement? Do you disagree with the statement? Is there something that you would like to add on to the statement? Let me know down in the comments below. And I have my comments open on YouTube and Spotify. I don't think you can comment on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Maybe you can. I just didn't look for the comment section. But my comments are open on YouTube and Spotify, and you guys can just drop a comment down anytime. Whether you agree or disagree with some of the statements that I said, or maybe there's a question you would like to ask me. I usually don't do Q&As on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, but if you guys have a list of questions you want to ask me about hockey, about the season, players, any hockey-related topic, let me know down in the comments, and I can try and do a Q&A episode on the Hockey Talk TG podcast. So, yeah. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. I really do appreciate each and every one of you that tune in to this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe. If you are watching the podcast on YouTube, make sure that you are following the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you heard, and if you enjoy listening or watching to the podcast, make sure to give this a follow. Again, with you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. each time. So hit that follow button. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Also, one more thing I want to announce before we head off. I did write a Blackhawks book on Amazon. It is called My Top 10 Chicago Blackhawks Moments, celebrating 100 years of Chicago hockey. I wrote that from a fan's perspective, from me being a Blackhawks fan since they're going into this centennial season. I will put the book link down in the description. It is out on Amazon. I wrote it from a Blackhawks fan perspective. There's been a lot of Chicago Blackhawks hockey, getting 100 years of it. And I've been a Blackhawks fan for a long time now. I grew up a Hawks fan. I grew up going to the games to United Center. Madhouse on Madison's always electric, and they're one of the reasons of how and why I got into hockey. So I just been a fan of them for a long time, and I really enjoy cheering them on, whether they do good or they do bad. So that's what the book is about, just my top 10 moments as Chicago Blackhawks fan, told from a fan's perspective, not stating like, not just all in the stats and stuff like that. It's just told from a fan's perspective, what I thought of it, my top 10 moments and stuff like that. So make sure to get your copy of the book today. I will put that book link down in the description. I also have other books written on Amazon that you can buy, such as Rising Up, A Young Player's Journey to the NHL, and Slash Shot Show, Story of Our Middle School Hockey Teams. I told you guys on the podcast, I am a journalism sports media major in college. And with that, I write my own books. So make sure to get your copies of my books today. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Hopefully you have a great Monday. Keep God first as always. Nothing in this world is possible without God. So you always got to keep God first. And keep God first, and you succeed in life. Be blessed. I will see you guys on Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. And take care.